Welcome, everyone, to the Going to Law School, the Big Picture webinar. This is Julie Helling. I'm your host, and I am extremely excited to be presenting this webinar today. I am an old hand to listening to webinars, but sort of a new hand to presenting webinars. So we'll see how I do. If you have any difficulty hearing me or seeing any of the slides or pictures of me, be sure to try and refresh your browser with that little clockwise arrow that's up in sort of the corner. So refresh your screen if you have any difficulties, or you could even try a different internet browser. If you're on Chrome, try Firefox, something like that. So let's get started. We have a lot to go through today. And the first thing I just want to also bring to your attention is that there is a chat function. So if you want to make a comment or raise a question, you should be able to type that into the chat box, and then be sure to hit return or enter to actually post the comment to the whole group. So welcome to everybody. We've got people from all over the country and from different communities, which is really exciting. So let's get started. What we're going to cover today is what is law school, because there's a lot of myths about law school and there's a lot of preconceptions about law school, and we're going to take a look at the reality. We're going to talk about reasons to go and reasons not to go to law school, look at some of the timelines that are required in the application process and some of the resources that are available. There'll be a question and answer period at the end, and we should absolutely be done within 60 minutes. I'm hoping even less, because at least it's a very nice day for me here, and I'm sure it's a nice day where you are as well, and you probably want to get out and be doing some other things too. So who am I? Most of you on this chat, on this webinar, know who I am, but for those of you who don't, I do have a JD, a Juris Doctor, the law degree from the University of Michigan Law School, and I've been a college professor and pre-law advisor for over 15 years. I recently started lawschoolaccess.com, which is a service designed, it's a website designed to help diverse students know what they need to know to be able to get to law school. And also, Law School Access, we have this series of webinars, and we have an amazing offer, a fantastic offer that's going to be offered to you at the end of the webinar. So you can look forward to that from lawschoolaccess.com. What is law school? Well, the short answer is it's the place that you go to get the graduate degree after a bachelor's degree in the United States, where you get the Juris Doctor, the JD, and that's the law degree that's required in almost all jurisdictions for you to have to actually sit for the bar examination, so that you can take the bar examination, pass it, and then be able to actually practice law. So you need that JD. It's also the place that you go to get an LLM, which is a Master's of Law. And the Master's of Law, that can be confusing because the Juris Doctor, the doctor degree, comes first, and then the LLM, the Master's of Law degree, and that's an advanced law degree in things like areas of specialization such as taxation. Some of them are offered, some of the schools offer them in criminal procedure, that sort of thing. There's 206 American Bar Association approved law schools in the United States in 2015. And the American Bar Association is the largest lawyer lobbying group, first of all, and it also is the group that accredits law schools. So it's important. There are other law schools that are not accredited or provisionally accredited, but my strongest recommendation is that you do not consider any law school that is not accredited by the ABA. And law school usually requires 3 years full-time study, although some programs allow 4 years for part-time study if you have to work as well as go to law school. If at all possible, my recommendation is that you do the full-time study of 3 years and just focus solely on law school if you can, because it is such an undertaking. Now, the steps to becoming a lawyer, which is the reason that most people go to law school, of course, you start with that high school degree or GED, and I throw that in there to make it clear that there are people who have come from less than ideal educational backgrounds, have gone on to get a college degree, a bachelor's degree, have gone on to get that Juris Doctor degree, the JD, and then have gone on to sit for and pass the bar examination in the state where you want to practice law. So there's a different bar examination in all of the different states. Some states have reciprocity with a few other states where if you sit for one bar exam in that state, it'll be accepted by another state, but there's no universal bar exam that's accepted in every state. So you need to pay attention to where you actually want to end up practicing law, or you can end up taking multiple bar exams. And bar exams are usually 2.5 to 3 days of testing, very intensive testing. So you want to avoid that if you can. Now, there is an advantage of going to law school now, in 2015 and around this time, if you're interested in going to law school. And let's take a look at the reason why that is. In 2010, the enrollment of new law students peaked, and that was because we had the economic recession of 2008, where students flocked to law school. Since 2010, law school enrollment has declined by 17.5%. So just to give you an idea, between 2013, the total number of law students, and 2014, the total number of law students is down in 2014 by almost 8,000 law students. That's a fair amount of law students. And overall, since 2010, that law school enrollment has declined by 17.5%. What that means is fewer students applying to law school means it may be easier to get into law school at this particular point in time. Now, it will still be very hard and very competitive to get into the top law schools. But some of the more middle tier law schools, and certainly the lower tier law schools, are scrambling to fill their law school classes. And that means that if your desire is to go to law school, your chances of getting in at some of these places, it may be a little more possible. To give you some perspective, there's over 1 million licensed lawyers in the United States in 2014. And of the law school class of 2014, that is the law students who graduated in 2014, only 64.1% were employed in jobs where bar passage, the passage of the bar examination, was required. That means that there's a substantial number who were not doing work for which a JD or the passage of the bar exam was required, so they're not doing lawyer work. And if it's your desire to be a lawyer, even if it is possibly a little easier to get into law school, you need to think about what are the employment opportunities if you go to law school. Now, it's interesting that the 2014 statistics are slightly better. We're starting to see a little bit more employment in lawyer jobs than the class of 2013. But overall, the class of 2014, 9.8% of that total class reported they were unemployed or looking for employment. This is something you need to consider if and when you go to law school. You need to do very well, and you need to go probably to the best ranked law school that you can get into. I'll talk more about the different factors to consider, but just as a first pass, that's one of the cold realities that exists. Now, the American Bar Association has required the law schools to report their basic demographic information, including if you're given a scholarship, how many students end up being able to retain it, what is their transfer of credit policy if students decide to transfer. It's rare to transfer between law schools. Most law students end up staying in the law school that they go to because it's such a shock and you have to adjust to a new community and all of those things. But if you do exceptionally well in your first law school, it is possible for some to transfer to another law school that may have more of the programs they're looking for, maybe a higher tier law school, all of these things. But the thing you want to look at is what the American Bar Association, it's their standard 509 disclosures, it's called. And the accredited law schools are required to give this information to the American Bar Association, which then puts it on its ABA website, these standard 509 disclosures of basic information that's very important, like the refund policy, curricular offerings, the academic calendar, all of those things. And again, those are available on the ABA website, along with employment summary reports. So you can see from a particular law school that you're looking at, what is the percentage of students from that law school from the last law school class that actually have a job that requires a law degree or passage of the bar exam. So be sure to look at those for each of the law schools that you might consider, those standard 509 information reports and the employment summary reports that are on the American Bar Association website. They're also required to be on the individual law school website, and you would click on, it's usually called ABA Required Disclosures. They have to have a tab, and that's where you can see what the particular law school has in way of employment of its students and the demographics and those kind of things. The big question to ask yourself is, why do I really want to go to law school? And there's good reasons to go to law school, and there's bad reasons to go to law school. The most obvious reason, of course, is to become a lawyer. If you want to become a lawyer in the United States, you need to then follow the steps to becoming a lawyer, get that bachelor's degree, then that Juris Doctor, then pass a bar examination. Now, a few states in the United States will allow you to sit for their bar examination without having a JD. California, I believe, is one of them, and Washington State has what's called the law clerk program, where you study under an individual or a firm of lawyers who teach you the basic courses, and then you are allowed to sit for the bar examination. But the problem is finding a practicing attorney who's willing to put that kind of time into somebody. So it's easiest for most people to go to law school and get that JD, and all states allow someone with a JD, assuming they meet the other criteria like good character, to go ahead and sit for the bar examination. But if you want to become a lawyer, going to law school makes sense. If you have a passion to be an advocate, if there's a cause that really speaks to you, be it social justice, be it environmental justice, which of course are related, if you're worried even about climate change and what the regulations of the Environmental Protection Agency are. I've got a student who's going off to law school who's very worried about how animals are treated and is interested. Michigan State Law School actually has a program in animal law. So there's all kinds of areas. If you're worried about, mass incarceration in our country, if you're worried about how people are treated when they go through divorces, these are the kinds of things that you might be passionate about. And this is a good reason to get a law degree. In conjunction with that, if you want to understand how the political system and courts truly work, you will have a big leg up on people who don't have that inner knowledge. And of course, a lot of our politicians have law degrees, because when you write statutes, when you're trying to figure out what the court is going to do, how something's going to be interpreted, law school is a good training ground for that. So if you have any desire to go into politics, either in the community grassroots organizing sense or in the formal running for Senate or House of Representatives sense, it's really important to understand how the political system and courts truly work, and going to law school can be a good way to do that. And of course, if you want to be a law professor and you love the intellectual challenge of it all, you'll need to go to law school. There are some reasons that I would argue are not good reasons to go to law school. First is the most obvious, which is the time and cost to attend law school. That's 3 years of your life minimum, maybe 4 if you go part-time. And the average debt that is incurred by law students today is more than $100,000. And that's on top of any loans or debt you may have incurred in your undergraduate career. Private law schools cost more, and students often come out with $150,000 of debt. That is very significant debt. It locks you in to trying to get a job that will pay for the payments of that level of debt, and it cannot be discharged in bankruptcy like a lot of other kinds of debt. So you want to think very carefully about, is this something I want to take on, or at least, is this a level of debt I want to take on at this point in my life? President Obama, interestingly enough, has come out and said that he would prefer, and of course he was a law professor at Harvard, he would prefer if law school was actually 2 years. And there's been a movement to make it 2 years in some circles. I don't see that happening anytime soon. But there is some attention that is now being paid to law schools because of the just staggering amount of debt that students are coming out with. And bottom line, of course, is to, if you do go, get as much scholarship money as humanly possible. A bad reason to go to law school is you want to become rich and important. There are a lot of lawyers in the country, over 1 million licensed lawyers, as we saw in the earlier slide. A lot of lawyers are not rich because the amount of jobs in corporate finance and those sort of corporate law firms are limited. And importance probably is not enough of a passion to carry you through the difficulties of law school. Another reason that I sometimes see students wanting to go to law school, or wanting in some respect, is to satisfy family expectations. And although I appreciate that it can be very, very difficult if a family has provided your education or has supported you emotionally and as much as they can in your education, and is proud of you and really want you to do as well as possible, and in their mind that means going to law school, there again, my recommendation is that's not a good enough reason to go to law school, that it won't carry you through the difficult times and the difficult path that law school is if you're not doing it for yourself first. And finally, a really bad reason to go to law school is because you're not ready to leave school yet. That's a reason that a lot of students in 2008 through 2010 were going to law school, because the market looks so bad, the employment market. But taking on that amount of debt is not going to help make the employment market look better. If you want sort of the most scathing critique of going to law school, there's a book called Don't Go to Law School Unless: A Law Professor's Guide to Maximizing Opportunity and Minimizing Risk by Paul Campos. And just sort of a side story here, one of my mentors, who was a law professor when I went to the University of Michigan Law School, I was telling him that I was planning to do some webinars talking about how to get to law school, helping students actually go step by step through the application process. And he was so concerned that I not lead students astray, as it were, that he was so concerned about the employment prospects for a number of students that he sent me this book, Don't Go to Law School Unless, by Paul Campos, unsolicited, so that I would be sure to read it and have the reasons not to go to law school front and center when I gave my webinars and when I talked to students. And I agree with a lot of the critique that Professor Paul Campos in his book gives law school. For one thing, it is a type of education known as the Socratic method, where the professor will call on you. You're supposed to already know the cases from the reading and from doing what are called case briefs, little short summaries of the cases, so that when you are called on in class, you can very quickly refer to them and give the information of the facts and the legal reasoning and those sorts of things. And then the professor will just keep asking you questions about the case and giving you hypotheticals, adding facts to the case. And what would you think the judge would then do with that new fact added? A limited amount of this kind of instruction can be useful, but the way it's often used in law school is sort of to intimidate people, because you're, called on and sort of drilled in front of the class. And the other thing is, you're very rarely in law school classes given any grades except the final grade on your final exam, which is the only exam you typically get. So you're going all semester not knowing how you're doing, and then you get your grade after you take one exam, the big final exam, and rarely are you given any feedback on that exam. You're just given the letter grade. So it is not ideal educational technique, is one of the major criticisms he has. He talks a lot about the funding of law school and the debt that is often required. So if you want to read the argument against going to law school, this is a book you may want to take a look at. I should disclose at this point that I really liked law school. I'm one of those odd ducks, and there's some reasons that I liked law school. One of which is I just come back from 2 years in the Peace Corps, which I had thought were very difficult years. And so to me, the stakes at law school, I was like, well, in perspective, the worst that can happen is I get a bad grade and I flunk out and, take the debt with me that I've already accumulated. But compared to what I felt I had just come from and the moral issues that I had to deal with in the Peace Corps, law school just didn't seem as daunting to me. And I really like the intellectual challenge. So I support law school. I would change its educational technique, but I think that it's really exciting to be with, the really motivated, intense, interesting students that a law school class provides. Now, if you do want to go to law school, how do you actually get there? First of all, you can go to law school with any major. You don't have to study a particular major in undergraduate school. I think the best major in undergraduate education is the one that you want to study because you'll do your best in it. It should include, whatever major you decide on, it should include critical thinking, reading, and writing skills, because these are skills that you will have to be able to undertake in law school, and you want to be able to show the law schools that you're already capable of doing those to a certain degree of proficiency. You do not, however, need to know specific legal subjects like criminal law or how to, contract law. You don't need to know specific legal subjects to go to law school. You won't be tested on it in the exam to go to law school. They don't expect you to know the details of specific laws at this point. So any major is acceptable. And a technical note, pre-law isn't really a major, it's an intention to go to law school. So just think about that. Sometimes I know with our law, diversity, and justice minor and concentration, sometimes that can be a mouthful and people just default it to pre-law, which is fine at Western Washington University. But technically pre-law isn't really a major, it's that intention to go to law school. And also a number of people get paralegal certificates. Paralegals work with attorneys. And that's usually not accepted, that credit in a paralegal course, as part of a bachelor's degree. The timeline in college that you should follow as you're thinking about getting to law school, in the freshman and sophomore years, just get the best grades that you can. Get the best evaluations if you're in a non-letter graded situation. Explore possible majors. What excites you? What do you have passion for? This is the time in your life to really explore. And also find out about the college's pre-law resources. In your junior year of college, things start to really kick in for getting to law school if you're on a traditional track. In the fall, you typically want to declare your major if you haven't done so already. It's good to meet with your university's pre-law advisor, and of course, continue to get the best grades that you can. In winter of your junior year, you want to sign up with LSAC.org. This is a website you cannot avoid if you are interested in going to law school. And if you learn nothing else from this webinar, it is you need to get on LSAC.org. And that is where you register for the law school admission test, which is known as the LSAT. And you want to register early because you want to go to the location of your choice. You don't want to take a major test like this and have been shuttled, have to shuttle to a different university or city than you're familiar with because the spaces ran out in where you are familiar with. And you also need to request disability accommodations early in the process if you want accommodations. The LSAT people, the Law School Admission Council, which is what LSAC stands for, had for many years put on an LSAT test score that they would send to the law schools when you applied if you got extra time on the test as an accommodation or any kind of disability accommodation. I'm happy to say that they were sued, because obviously that just sort of made people with disability accommodations look like they weren't in the same class just from the get-go if all those accommodations are reported. And now they can't report those because they were sued successfully. But they do require a lot of proof of disabilities to get accommodation, and you want to start that process early if that applies to you. The LSAT format there's 3 different kinds of multiple choice questions: the reading comprehension questions, the analytical reasoning, sort of known colloquially as the logic game section, and then the logical reasoning section. Those are all multiple choice, and you want to answer every question. There's nothing that's deducted if you get a wrong answer, so be sure to answer every multiple choice question. And I'm going to speak in detail during the boot camp this month about the LSAT. That just is to give you an overview. There is a writing sample also where you have to handwrite your answer to a question. And all of these sections are 35 minutes and they're very rigorously timed. The writing sample, however, is not scored, but it is provided to the law schools. So you want to do well on it, but you really want to do well in the multiple choice sections. I could have a long discussion about my concern about the LSAT and about trying to say, well, the two most important things, if I'm an admissions person looking at people that are applying to law school, if I say, well, it's the GPA and the LSAT score, I would argue, and of course I teach at a college that doesn't give letter grades, I would argue that that doesn't encompass enough of the person and what it is that lawyers actually do when they practice law. Because of course, when you're in the courtroom, you're not answering multiple choice questions and filling in little bubble tests. You're doing a lot of writing, you may be appearing in court, and you're also dealing with clients. So all these things, I would argue, need to be tested as well and are not by the LSAT. So I could have a long discussion about my concerns about the LSAT, but right now it is something that exists and has to be taken seriously if you want to apply to a law school in the US, and Canadian law schools often require it as well. In that junior year of college, or after college, if you're applying to law school somewhat later, I recommend studying for the LSAT at least 2 and probably 3 months, with taking a lot of old LSATs timed and just getting really, really comfortable with the test. A lot of people take an LSAT prep course. These are expensive, usually over $1,000. And in the boot camp that I'm going to talk about a little later, I will be giving some resources that are free or very low cost to be able to study for the LSAT. But my recommendation is that you take the LSAT in June at the end of your junior year of college, if possible. In the senior year of college, if you're on the traditional timeline, which is that you're planning to go to law school right after college, you would be researching the law schools that you might want to attend and looking for law school information fairs where law school admissions personnel come. There's one at Western Washington University every year in November. The national law school associations also put them on sort of regionally. So you can just go from booth to booth, collecting information and asking questions of the law school admissions personnel. Dress up, have a resume on you, and obviously seek to make a good impression, but do ask the real questions that you have. You also want to consider early bird admissions, which is where you say to the law school, I'm going to apply early, and you are the school I want to go to. So you can only do this for one law school. And if you admit me, I will accept and go to your law school. And that can sometimes help in getting in as well, is that you're showing a real dedication to one particular law school. In the senior year, in the fall, so that's September, October LSAT, if you didn't take it in June at the end of your junior year, then again, you need to register with lsac.org if you haven't already done so, and take that September, October LSAT, or if you're really waiting, take that December LSAT as a final chance to apply for admission to law school in the fall. Do not take the LSAT one time as just sort of a test. That's a really bad idea because all of your scores get reported to the law schools. Some law schools will average those scores. Some law schools will take the highest of the scores. It depends on the law school. And I've seen occasionally people actually do worse, which is, the worst of all possible worlds, on that second LSAT. So your plan should be to study very hard, take it once, and do your best to get the best score you can. You will be writing your application for law school, which you register with lsac.org They compile all of you send all of the law school admissions materials to them, such as your personal statement, your resume. You send all of those materials to lsec.org, which is the Law School Admission Council. You get letters of recommendation sent to them, the Law School Admission Council, and they also get your college transcripts, and they put that all together, and they send it to your law schools. So, and that's, of course, they get money because they charge money for this service. But all of the materials have to go to them, and you'll be pulling those together in the fall of your senior year, or the fall of whatever year that you want to go, where you want to go to law school the following year. You should definitely aim to have your entire law school application submitted by January 1st of your senior year, or of the year where you want to start the next fall. Earlier submissions are better. The admissions personnel aren't as just tired of seeing applications. It shows your dedication. Definitely apply early. Now, I will say that I saw someone even take the June LSAT, who's going to be starting in the fall of this year, and still got into a law school and is still going to start. But that's really cutting it close, and is only possible because law schools are scrambling to fill their law school classes. You can't count on that always being the case. So your best guideline is to have all your materials into the Law School Admission Council by January 1st, before the fall that you want to start law school. In the winter, after you've submitted everything January 1st, as that winter, continues, you want to make sure your application is actually complete by checking with the Law School Admission Council that all the letters of recommendation and all your transcripts have been received. I recommend applying to at least 5 law schools. Some of my fellow lawyers and pre-law advisors and law professors that I know say at least 10 law schools. The problem there, at least in the past, has been that law schools usually require a fee, an application fee, which can be $50 or more, and that can add up relatively quickly, particularly for students who come, from low-income situations. So, but certainly not less than 5 law schools you want to apply to. You want to apply to a dream law school. You want to apply to 3 law schools you think you have a decent chance to get into. And then you want a fallback law school where you think you're pretty sure you could get in at a minimum. Now, the thing about the application fees that is true about this particular time in history is that a lot of law schools will waive those fees if you ask. Don't be afraid to ask and just say, money's tight. Is it possible to waive the law school admission fee, application fee? And a lot of them will do it because, again, they're trying to fill their law school classes. So keep that in mind. If at all possible, and of course this costs money, the problem is that a lot of people don't have money, a lot of students particularly don't have money, but if possible, try to visit law schools in person to see which ones really would be a good fit for you. And then in the spring, if you're accepted to multiple schools, you'll need to decide which one you really want to go to and put your deposit down. And after college graduation, remember to have your updated transcript from college sent to law school. I'm often asked, is it a good idea to take off time between college and law school? And I have 2 answers to this. One, I totally understand that it may be necessary for work and family needs. You may have commitments that just have to be met. I am in favor of taking time off between undergraduate education and law school because I think that it gives you a chance to do things that you won't have that opportunity later once you're kind of on the path to being a lawyer and then become a lawyer. The only time that I say, really think about whether you want to take any time off is when I'm concerned that a student has worked so hard as maybe the, first in their family to go to college, or the family hasn't been as supportive as maybe it could have been. And I'm worried that they're going to get, derailed by family expectations not to go to law school and family obligations, that if they get off the path, they won't be able to get back on. And I have that frank discussion with them. But if that's not an issue in your case, absolutely take time off between undergrad and law school if you can. Because taking a year, 2 years, 3 years, you can learn another career. You can find out what the real world, quote unquote, is like. And I think it gives really important context. Like I was talking about, I did Peace Corps. It gave me such a world view that I hadn't had before, that the pressures of law school, which can be really intimidating for a lot of students, particularly those that go right through, who have, are used to valuing themselves on their GPA, it gives you that context that this is important and I need to work hard, but it's not the end of the world. And I think that that is really valuable as well. So if possible, I suggest taking time off between undergraduate and law school. Where can you get more information? Well, the Law School Admissions Council has a ton of information. It can be a little overwhelming, but you do need to look at lsac.org just to sort of familiarize yourself with it. And it has, pre-JD students information about the LSAT and about signing up for the LSAT and about, how to submit your materials to the Law School Admission Council so they can be compiled and sent to law schools. So it's a good site to just sort of, take it with a grain of salt in terms of there's so much there. You're going to be coming back to it repeatedly, so don't be overwhelmed if you can help it the first time you look at it. Pre-law advisors at your college while you're in college are great to talk to, and a lot of them will help alumni as well, so don't be afraid to reach out after you've graduated too. Law school admissions personnel are very helpful. And a lot of the ones that I've dealt with have really wanted the student to find the best fit for the student. So they can give a lot of information not only about their own school, but can talk about the general picture for law school. So reach out to them. Magazines such as Pre-Law Magazine, which granted is a commercial enterprise. The reason I like it is because it has a lot of the ads for all of the law schools right in its pages. So it's kind of an easy place to flip through and see what each law school says is its major selling point. And it has, the pretty pictures of the campuses and stuff. So I kind of like it for that. It does have some useful information about how to apply and that kind of thing. So that's online. So you can just Google Pre-Law Magazine. And then the Law School Access website has some basic information about, and some important information about the National Law Student Associations that exist, such as the Black Law Student Association, the Asian American Law Student Association, the Latina Law Student Association, law students with disabilities, law students of different religious faiths, just a whole bunch of different law student associations that it would be worth reaching out to. And I've compiled those, that contact information on the Law School Access website. The American Bar Association has a lot of information as well. Just to remember that I talked about those standard 509 information reports, which tell you the number of men and women at a particular law school, which they have to disclose, the numbers of students of color and different ethnicities, if they keep their scholarships going for just the first year or if it's all 3 years, all those kinds of things they have to disclose, and you can find them all on the ABA, the American Bar Association website, under the Standard 509 information reports. It also has national diversity and inclusion statistics and information about the initiatives that the American Bar Association is undertaking to try and diversify the legal profession, which is behind the medical profession, for example. The legal profession needs to catch up and definitely diversify. But you can read about some of those efforts and get a lot of information from the American Bar Association. This is the exciting offer that I told you I was going to give you at the end of the webinar, and that is access to the Law School Access Boot Camp. This is going to be 4 weeks of live webinars throughout the month of July that will guide you step by step through the law school admission process. And even if you're not 100% sure that you want to go to law school, working through that process will help you, A, decide, do you want to go to law school, and B, get such a leg up on other students in terms of getting it done over the summer when you typically have, more time, or at least sort of more brain power if you're not taking summer classes, to really focus and work on this rather than when you're scrambling during the regular academic year. The Law School Access Boot Camp is a head start, and a lot of students that I work with have not had access to anything like a head start before. The 4 webinars that I've listed out there that are going to be offered: the law school application process in detail, the LSAT, choosing the right law school for you, and then what to do in law school and beyond to give yourself the absolute best situation possible. These are the lessons that will be offered during the boot camp. But in addition, not only do you get instruction from, someone who has 15 years of experience as a college professor and pre-law advisor, but I've got current law students chomping at the bit to be available to help as mentors for everybody that signs up for the boot camp. So you're going to hear not only from me and my point of view, but I haven't been in law school in 20 years. So you will hear right from the horse's mouth about what law school is like. You can ask any questions you have about what applying to law school is like. This is your chance to really find out the information that you need to know. And there'll be a private Facebook group for you and all the other students in the boot camp where you can share information, ideas, questions, and just kind of get support. So these benefits are not available elsewhere. You will need to do your part in the boot camp, which will include doing drafts of a personal statement and resume so that we can take a look at them and give you some feedback. And I'm also going to ask that everybody take a self-timed sample LSAT test. We'll provide the test for free. This is an old LSAT test that's already been offered, but you'll need to sit down for the 4 sections of 35 minutes in one sitting. You'll have to time yourself, so you need to schedule out a couple hours for one of the weeks of homework and actually take the LSAT exam. This is just to give a baseline. It's not to scare you, but just to say, let's see what you're really up against, and then we can figure out what the best study method is. So those are some things that we would expect from you on your end taking the boot camp. This first boot camp is going to be free. It's free for everyone who agrees to do the work, the homework in quotes. So don't miss this amazing opportunity. And I'm very excited about the current law student mentors I've got lined up. I'm very excited about the lessons that are being put together. Each lesson will be between 30 and 45 minutes. And later boot camps, this is sort of the beta test of the boot camp, but later boot camps will cost money. So get in on the ground floor now, take it for free, and take advantage of a head start on applying to law school that's not available elsewhere. The schedule for the boot camp is Tuesdays, noon to 1 Pacific time, starting July 7th and going each Tuesday until July 8th. However, replays will be available of the webinars, so that if you really can't catch them live, you will be able to see them recorded after they've been filmed, obviously. However, you must have registered for the boot camp to get access to not only the replays, but the benefits such as being paired with a current law student mentor, the free LSAT to take, those kinds of things. So you absolutely need to have registered if it interests you. And I'm hoping that people can do that live webinar time, but if your schedule really doesn't allow it, you could take those webinars later that day or the next day if you need to. The people have already started signing up for the bootcamp membership, and it is limited. So you want to register now, today, to claim your spot. And you can register at this link, which is a very long, complicated link. So it's probably easier just to go to the lawschoolaccess.com website where there's a tab Bootcamp, and it gives you the link again, and you can click and go off that link to register. Please do that today, because I want to start assigning the current law student mentors to students as early as tomorrow, if possible. So, and like I say, the spots are already going, and it's a limited number of spots that are available. So again, there's the two places to register. That link, if you want to put that in and go right to it, or again, go to lawschoolaccess.com. This is the question and answer section. And I'm very interested if anybody has any comments or any kind of and I seem to have, all right, let's see if we can do this. There I am. You can see me now. Broadcasting live from Birch Bay in Washington State with my big microphone right here. And my t-shirt, as usual, I'm dressed up for this. And please plug in if you have any questions, and then remember to hit enter so we can see what questions you may have. And I'm going to also point out that if you have questions later, because this may be hard to get questions right on the spot, but just email me at lawschool, all one word, lawschool@helling.inc.com. That's Helling Inc., like my last name, HELLING, and Inc., INK.com, as the the actual URL. So that's lawschool@hellinginc.com if you have later questions. Okay, so I gather there's a question, and I'm trying to bring it up. So let's see what I've got here. Can you read me the question?
What?
Can you read the question to me?
What are some good options for gaining valuable experience between undergrad and law school? For example, you said you joined Peace Corps prior to law school.
That's a great question, and I'll repeat it. The question is, what are some examples of valuable experiences that one could get between college and law school, such as I, for example, said Peace Corps. And obviously Peace Corps is a possible example depending on one's politics and what one thinks of governmental assistance. I think there's a lot of issues connected with Peace Corps. AmeriCorps has been a particularly good experience in terms of how law schools look at it. Law schools will look at AmeriCorps and Peace Corps and Teach for America as good experiences usually. I would also say there's issues, social justice issues and political issues connected with all of those. In addition, if there's any kind of community organizing, or if there's some passion you want to pursue, be it organic farming or interning at the public defender's office is a good one. Interning at the prosecutor's office would be a good one as well. Some students come out of law school, come out of undergraduate, and they elect to be a legal assistant or paralegal for a while for a practicing attorney to get, really hands-on look at what lawyers do to see if they want to go on to law school. Several of our current alumni have done that for a year or two. So but community organizing or working for the Humane Society or, anything where it's speaking to you as a passion, I think would be a great experience. Are there other questions?
Yes.
They're not coming up for me the same time they're coming up for you. So what's the other one?
When it comes to references for the application, do they all have to be academic or can they come from other sources? I'm currently taking a gap year, so I'm wondering if I can include one from my employer.
Yes. Okay. Another good question. Do all letters of recommendation have to be academic letters of recommendation? Or if, for example, you're taking a gap year, can you get a letter from your employer? The answer is yes, you can get a letter from your employer. And assuming it's a good letter of recommendation, which I assume all the letters that you would ask for are good letters of recommendation, it would look good. But the ones they're going to take probably the most attention, to pay the most attention to, are the academic sources, because they want to know if you can do the academic work. So be sure to have some academic letters of recommendation, but also include, if you have that opportunity, a letter from an employer is a good one. Don't include any sort of gratuitous letters. Sometimes people have had family friends, depending on what sphere you grow up in and what sphere you move in. And, just a sort of general letter from a senator or something like that saying, I knew this person, wouldn't be helpful. If your employer knows you, knows your character, knows your work ethic, that will be helpful. Okay, that seems to be all the questions. So we're going to go back just real quick so that I can put up. Thank you so much. I really, really appreciate you guys taking the time out, you folks taking the time out today to watch this webinar. I'm really hoping that more people are going to sign up for the boot camp today so that I can get a good sense of the numbers that I've got to work with. I think it is a fantastic opportunity. It's completely free, and it will give you a head start that very, very few students would have access to anything like that. So please go to www.lawschoolaccess.com, lawschoolaccess.com, and sign up for the boot camp today. So thank you very much. Oh, one more question? Okay.
Juan says, is it possible to make zoos illegal throughout the country?
That would be the kind of thing that would be, so the question is it possible to make zoos illegal throughout the country? And the answer is yes, you could do that with national legislation. You could also bring lawsuits, and there is a big movement towards animal rights. Like I say, we have someone going to the Michigan State University Law School starting next year who's very interested in animal rights and is going because they have a program in that. So I think that would be a great area of law to explore. Those are the kind of passions that would make it worthwhile to go to law school. So again, thank you so much, everyone. I really, really do appreciate you taking the time today. And I'm going to say goodbye at this point. Oh, another question?
says the link for the boot camp is not working. So is there, you double make sure that all of that, I mean, I'm just asking.
Oh, the link for the boot camp isn't working? Well, that's odd because it worked. Okay, it worked. People have already started signing up. This is the 2 links. And can the person who said the link for the boot camp wasn't working, can they tell me if it's through Law School Access that they tried, or if they tried directly just putting in the Webinar Jam link? That would be helpful information. But I will double check it as soon as I get off this webinar.
Okay, so yeah, you're getting 2 people saying the link isn't working. So can they contact you directly?
Yeah.
Can you give them?
Yeah. So if you have difficulty and you want to take the boot camp, and the link isn't working right this second, can you email me at lawschool@hellinginc.com? Again, that's law school, all one word, at Helling Inc., HELLINGINK.com, so that I can fix it, but know that that I should reserve spots for you would be great. So I'm going to hang up now, and any questions or comments are much appreciated. And if you can send them to lawschool@hellinginc.com, that would be very, very helpful. So thank you so much. Bye-bye.